The air in Marrakesh felt thicker than it had yesterday, heavy with heat and something else I couldn't name. Maybe it was the silence between us. My daughter Heather sat across from me at the airport cafe, stirring her coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. Her husband Ethan scrolled through his phone, pretending to read something important. It should have been a good morning. Our flight home to Tucson was in 2 hours. We'd spent a week in Morocco, sunlit markets, winding alleys, camel rides at sunset. The kind of family trip Heather had said would help us heal after her mother's passing. I'd believed her. Maybe I'd wanted to. "You two have been quiet today," I said finally. My voice sounded too casual, even to my own ears. Heather looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired, Dad. Long week." Ethan nodded without looking up. "Yeah, just ready to get back home." Something about the way he said home made my chest tighten. My home? The small adobe-style house on the edge of Tucson where Heather grew up, where her mother and I had planted mesquite trees that still shaded the porch. I'd let Heather and Ethan live there rent-free after their business went under last year. It felt like the right thing to do. Family takes care of family. That's what I'd always believed. Heather checked her watch. "Dad, could you grab us some water and snacks for the flight? The line might get long." "I'll come with you," I offered. "We could—" No, she interrupted too quickly. "You go ahead. I'll watch the bags. We'll meet you at the gate." She handed me a $20 bill. Her fingers were cold. I noticed that. The little details you only understand later, when the puzzle finally makes sense. "All right," I said slowly. "What do you want?" "Just water," she said. "Anything's fine." The shop was small and crowded. I took my time, picking up 3 bottles of water, 2 bags of trail mix, and a pack of mints Heather liked. The family ahead of me was arguing over candy for their kids. I smiled politely and waited. Maybe 10 minutes passed, maybe 12. When I returned, the seats where they'd been sitting were empty. Not just empty, cleared. No backpacks, no jackets, no sign anyone had ever been there. I scanned the terminal. Maybe they'd gone to the restroom. Maybe they'd switched seats. I walked the row. Gate 14, gate 15, gate 16. Nothing. My chest began to tighten, my pulse rising with each step. I hurried to the counter. "Excuse me," I said to the woman behind it. "The couple sitting in seats 14 and 15, Heather and Ethan Grayson, have you seen them?" She glanced at her monitor. "Grayson? Yes, they checked in for an earlier flight. They boarded 30 minutes ago." My voice caught. "An earlier flight? To Tucson?" She shook her head gently. "No, sir. To Madrid. They connected through another airline." For a moment, the world tilted. Madrid? Not Tucson. Not home. I reached for my passport out of habit, except it wasn't there. I opened my backpack. Empty. No wallet. No phone. Just the small plastic bag of water bottles and trail mix. I remember standing there, surrounded by strangers, boarding planes to destinations with names I could barely pronounce. I remember the metallic taste of panic, sharp and cold. And I remember the moment when the truth finally pierced through the fog. They didn't forget me. They didn't lose me. They left me. On purpose. At the airport security desk, I tried to explain. My daughter and her husband took my passport, my phone, everything. Saying it out loud felt absurd, like a nightmare spoken into daylight. The officer blinked, then asked for identification. I had none. He sighed, gave me a form, and directed me to the U.S. Consular Agency downtown. I walked through the Marrakesh streets with the sun burning my neck, past fruit vendors and tourists laughing with cameras slung around their necks. My reflection in shop windows looked like a ghost, a 65-year-old man in khakis, holding a plastic bag of water and nuts, moving because standing still meant thinking, and thinking hurt. At the consular office, an American flag hung limp in the still air. The woman at the desk, Olivia Park, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned forward. "We can issue an emergency passport," she said. 3 business days. We'll also help you contact the local police for a report. Her calm steadied me. I nodded, grateful, though my throat felt tight. She studied my face for a moment. "You're not broken," she said softly. "You're angry. Angry people find their way home." Outside, the light had softened into orange dusk. I sat on the stone steps of the consulate, staring at the slip of paper in my hand, my new case number. I replayed everything in my head. Heather's smile at breakfast, her insistence I get the water, that $20 bill, the document she'd made me sign last month. She'd said it was for emergency medical planning. I'd signed on her tablet, didn't even read it. She'd always been the responsible one. Now the realization came like lightning cutting the sky in half. She hadn't just abandoned me. She'd prepared for it. Whatever that document was, it wasn't medical. It was the key to everything she wanted. The streets below flickered with neon signs and the hum of evening markets. I was alone in a country thousands of miles from home, but in that moment, something inside me shifted. Shock turned into focus. Panic hardened into resolve. I wasn't done. Not yet. Somewhere in Tucson, my daughter thought she'd erased me. But the next time she saw me, I'd be standing in my doorway with the truth in my hand. And when she realized what I knew, her life would never be the same again. The city looked different once the sun went down. The pink walls that had glowed all week now looked bruised, almost violet under the streetlights. I sat on a stone bench outside the consulate, clutching the plastic bag that had somehow become my only possession. 3 bottles of water, 2 bags of trail mix, $8, and a slip of paper with my case number printed on it. That was all I had left. I kept thinking about Heather's face when she handed me that 20. Calm, detached, almost gentle. The kind of face people wear when they've already made peace with what they're about to do. Inside the consulate, Olivia had written everything down carefully, like a surgeon documenting a wound. "We'll help you get home," she'd said. But that didn't make the waiting easier. 3 business days in a foreign country, with no ID, no phone, and nowhere to stay. It might as well have been a lifetime. I started walking. Marrakesh at night felt alive and endless. Vendors called out from food stalls, the smell of roasted lamb and spices hanging thick in the air. Somewhere, music echoed from a courtyard. I didn't belong to any of it. A taxi slowed beside me, the driver leaning out the window. "Where you go, monsieur?" "Nowhere," I said before realizing how true that was. He frowned, studying me for a moment, then parked and stepped out. He was middle-aged, short, with kind eyes. "You are American?" "Yes, stuck American." He smiled at that, not mocking, but understanding. "I am Rafik. Sometimes stuck is beginning." I almost laughed. "You sound like a philosopher." "My father said it first, when my son stole my shop money and disappeared. That shut me up." Rafik listened as I told him what happened. The missing passport, the sudden flight to Madrid, the daughter who left me behind like lost luggage. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he nodded slowly, as though confirming something he already knew about the world. "Family cuts deepest," he said. "Strangers only scratch." He drove me to a small guest house off a quiet side street. The sign out front read Maison Amina. Faded paint, but clean. $15 a night, Rafik said. "Good people. You stay here until passport comes." I tried to pay him, but he shook his head. "No, monsieur. Keep your money, you will need it." That night, I lay on a narrow bed, in a room that smelled faintly of soap and dust. Ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. Outside, the city pulsed with life I couldn't touch. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Heather's smile from that morning. The one that looked so much like her mother's, only colder. What kind of daughter does that? Around midnight, I sat up and turned on the small desk lamp. The light fell over the case form Olivia had given me. Temporary passport. Ready in 3 business days. There was also a handwritten note. Emergency Assistance Fund. $600. Payback when able. She believed I'd survive this. I wasn't so sure. But something shifted when I read her words again. You're not broken. You're angry. Angry people find their way home. She was right. I opened the nightstand drawer and found a hotel notepad. I began to write a list the way I used to before every project at work. I'd been an engineer for 35 years. I built bridges that still stood. A man who can plan a suspension arch over a canyon can plan his way home. List. 1. Identification. Temporary passport. 2. Money. Emergency fund. 3. Transportation. Flight to Tucson. 4. Evidence. What did Heather take and why? When I reached number 4, my pen hesitated. Evidence. I remembered the tablet she'd brought over last month, the one she said had some medical updates. She'd stood at my kitchen counter, chatting lightly as I signed with the stylus. I hadn't read a word of it. My wife had passed just a year earlier. I'd trusted Heather. But now, I could see it clearly, the cursor, the scrolling text she never let me read, the way she distracted me with small talk about dinner. It wasn't a medical form. It was something else entirely. Maybe the deed of gift I found on my desk back home. Maybe something worse. I felt my pulse in my throat. She hadn't just abandoned me. She'd rehearsed it, planned it like a performance, even choosing a country far enough that I couldn't return quickly. I folded the note and slipped it into my walletless pocket. I might be alone, but I wasn't powerless. Morning brought a knock at the door. A young woman with dark hair and a hotel uniform held a tray with tea and flatbread. From Amina, she said shyly. She says American must eat breakfast. I smiled. Something I hadn't done in days. Tell her thank you. She nodded. You call family today? No family, I said softly. Just a daughter I used to have. Later, I walked back to the consulate to file a formal police report. The Moroccan officer looked skeptical at first, until I mentioned my daughter taking the passport. Then he sighed and wrote theft by family member in careful English. When he handed me the stamped form, I felt something steady settle in my chest. Paperwork proof, the beginning of a trail. 3 days, Olivia had said. 3 days to get a new passport, to get back home. As I walked back through the market, the city seemed sharper, clearer. I noticed the rhythm of people bargaining, the gleam of brass lamps under the sun, the way voices rose and fell like waves. And for the first time since that morning at the airport, I felt something close to gratitude. Heather thought she'd left me helpless. What she really did was wake me up. She'd taken my house on paper and left me stranded in a foreign land. But she'd forgotten one simple truth. An engineer always checks the foundation before collapse. And I'd just discovered the cracks in hers. In 3 days, I'd be on a plane back to Tucson. And when I opened my front door, she'd realize that the man she'd tried to erase was still very much alive and ready to reclaim everything she stole. The wheels touched the runway with a jolt that shook me awake. Home, Tucson. I'd never been so grateful to see the dusty horizon through the airplane window, saguaros rising like silent witnesses under a white Arizona Sunday. The air shimmered as we taxied, the heat already reaching through the glass like a familiar hand. I waited until most passengers had deboarded before standing. The small blue emergency passport in my pocket felt heavier than it should. It wasn't just paper, it was proof that I still existed. Proof my daughter hadn't erased me completely. Outside, the desert air hit like a furnace, dry and clean. I didn't call anyone. There was no one to call. The taxi driver, a kid with mirrored sunglasses and a University of Arizona hoodie, asked if I was returning from vacation. Something like that, I said. A long one. When he dropped me off 47 minutes later, I just sat in the back seat, staring at the house. The stucco walls, the porch swing, the pale blue trim, everything looked the same. But something was wrong. The blinds were drawn, the flower beds overgrown, a garbage bin overflowing with old boxes. It didn't look lived in. It looked emptied. Everything all right, sir? The driver asked. Yeah, I lied. Everything's fine. After he drove off, I stood on the sidewalk for a long time. The key from the fake rock by the rosebush still fit, but when I turned it, the door swung open without resistance. I stepped inside. The air smelled stale, the way a room does when someone's been in a hurry to leave. The living room was half bare. The grandfather clock that had stood in the corner for 30 years gone. My wife's favorite armchair gone. The glass cabinet that once held her china was open. The shelves stripped except for one teacup that had rolled to the floor. I moved slowly from room to room. Bedroom jewelry box emptied, study drawers pulled out, papers scattered. The watch my father gave me? Gone. My Leica camera, the one I'd taken on every family trip? Gone. Then I saw it. On the desk, neatly centered, like a presentation waiting for approval, lay a manila folder. I knew before I touched it what it would say. Deed of gift. Grantor, Samuel Grayson. Grantee, Heather Grayson. Property address, 1614 East Fremont Street. Date, 4 weeks ago. Signed and notarized. My signature the same stroke, the same pressure I'd used all my life. I sat down in the chair, the room tilting slightly. There was a notary seal in the corner, a smiling witness signature I didn't recognize. This wasn't a forgery. It was worse. It was real. I had signed it, blindly, trusting her. The rage came quiet, steady, cold. The kind of anger that doesn't scream, it sharpens. I looked around the house again, every missing thing suddenly falling into place like pieces of an ugly puzzle. She hadn't just wanted the house. She'd wanted to make sure I couldn't fight for it. And she'd almost succeeded. I was still staring at the document when I heard a voice outside. Sam? That you? It was Frank Donovan, my neighbor for nearly 2 decades. Retired firefighter. The kind of man who still mowed his lawn in straight lines. He walked toward me, pushing his reading glasses up on his forehead. Holy hell, Sam, you're back early. Where's Heather? What happened? I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. They left earlier than planned. Frank frowned. Earlier? I saw them a couple mornings ago loading boxes into a U-Haul. Figured you were moving. My pulse jumped. What time? Early, he said. Before sunrise. Maybe 6:30. Ethan kept checking the street like he didn't want anyone seeing him. That confirmed it. She'd started packing before the Morocco trip even began. This wasn't a spontaneous betrayal, it was a schedule. Frank, I said quietly, if anyone asks, you haven't seen me. He studied my face, the lines around my mouth, the way I was gripping the doorframe. You're in trouble, aren't you? I'm handling it. He nodded slowly, the way firefighters do when they know a building's already burning, but respect the man trying to walk through it anyway. After he left, I locked the door and went straight to my study. My hands moved automatically, checking drawers, opening cabinets, documenting everything. The old camera missing? Picture it. The watch? Picture it. The deed of gift? Photographed from every angle. Evidence. That word again. By late afternoon, I'd filled an entire folder on my borrowed phone with photos, empty shelves, disturbed drawers, missing heirlooms. I emailed copies to myself from a new account under a new password. Old habits from my engineering days, redundancy, always build backups. At dusk, I made coffee, though I barely drank it. The smell reminded me of mornings with my wife, of normal life before deceit and signatures and legal seals. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the deed of gift again. Heather had been so calm that day at the kitchen counter. Just a quick update for your records, Dad. Power of attorney? Living will? You know standard stuff. I'd smiled, signed where she pointed, and gone back to fixing the sink. Now, the same signature sat here declaring my house hers. The paper trembled in my hand, not because I was weak, because I knew how easily I'd let her do it. I looked at the clock. 7:32 p.m. Too late for calls, but not too late for planning. I took out a legal pad, drew a line down the center, and started writing. Left column, what she took. Right column, what I still had. She'd taken my house, my valuables, my name on the deed. But I still had something better, proof of fraud and time. That night I slept in my own bed, or what was left of it, for the first time in weeks. I didn't dream of Morocco. I dreamed of courtrooms, of sealed envelopes, of Heather's face when she realized she'd built her little empire on lies. At dawn, I woke to the desert wind brushing the curtains. The house creaked like it always had, old but steady. It had been mine for 32 years. And tomorrow morning, it would be mine again, on paper, even if I had to fight for it inch by inch. I poured another cup of coffee, sat by the window, and whispered into the quiet room, "You thought I'd be stranded. You thought wrong." Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, catching the dust still hanging in the air. I sat at the table with a legal pad, the deed of gift laid flat beside my coffee cup, its notary seal staring back like an accusation. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. This wasn't grief anymore. It was work. For 35 years, I'd been an engineer. My job had been to spot cracks before bridges collapsed. Now, the bridge was my life, and I'd let someone plant explosives beneath it. I flipped open my old laptop. The screen glowed weakly to life. My email was still logged in, my bank accounts untouched, thank God. But the house, the deed, the signature, that was a different kind of theft. One that wore a smile and called you Dad. By 8 a.m., I was on the phone with every attorney within 50 miles of Tucson who specialized in property law. Most secretaries told me to call back later. Then one voice, calm, clipped, confident, said, "This is Claire Yu. How soon can you come in?" "Now," I said. Her office downtown sat on the 20th floor of a building overlooking the Catalina Mountains, the kind of place where the blinds never quite meet, and the scent of toner hangs permanently in the air. Claire looked younger than I expected, late 40s maybe, but her eyes were sharp. Her desk was stacked with folders labeled title disputes, fraudulent conveyance, probate. She gestured for me to sit. "I read your message," she said. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened." I did. The trip, the missing passport, the empty house, the deed with my signature. When I slid the folder across her desk, she studied it in silence for a long time, tracing the notary seal with her pen. "Your signature is real," she said finally. "The document's legal on its face. But if we can prove misrepresentation, that you didn't understand what you were signing, we can file for rescission based on fraud and undue influence." Meaning? Meaning, we can make this paper disappear. The way she said it made something inside me unclench. "What do you need from me?" "Evidence and patience. Fraud cases take time. We'll start with the police report from Morocco. It helps show a pattern of deception. I'll file an emergency motion to freeze any sale or transfer of your property until the court hears your case." "Do you think she'll try to sell it?" Claire met my eyes. "If she went this far, she's already tried." She was right. That evening, using Frank Donovan's computer, I checked property listings. My house wasn't public yet, but 3 agencies had been contacted recently under Heather's name for valuation requests. I printed the emails. Dates matched perfectly with the Morocco trip. That night, I couldn't sleep. I moved through the house in darkness, writing notes, labeling drawers, measuring my anger in quiet footsteps. Around midnight, I unlocked the back door and stepped into the yard. The desert wind carried the scent of mesquite. I stood there until the stars blurred. By morning, I had a plan. First step: lock down the evidence. I cataloged everything missing: jewelry, silver service, my Leica camera, the Omega watch. I wrote serial numbers beside each one from old insurance documents. Then I called the Tucson Police Department to add the stolen property to my report. Second step: lock down the house. I called a locksmith named Arturo, who replaced every deadbolt and installed a coded security system. When he was done, he handed me 3 new keys and said, No one gets in now without your say. No one, I repeated. Third step, investigate her motive. Claire recommended a private investigator, a man named Miles Harker, a retired detective with a reputation for uncovering uncomfortable truths. He arrived that afternoon, gray-haired and unsmiling, with a notepad and the steady eyes of someone who'd seen too much. Your daughter's name, address, and any financial history you have, he said. She and her husband live in a condo near Speedway Boulevard. I told him, I don't have her financials. I'll find them, he said simply. By the next morning, he had. She's drowning, Miles told me over the phone. $72,000 in credit card debt, 3 business loans in default, and a 4th one she tried to take out last month, denied due to insufficient collateral. Guess what she listed as potential collateral? My house. Exactly. He paused. Also, she contacted 2 real estate agents asking for quick sale options, fast cash offers. The first conversation happened before your Morocco trip. So that was it. My home wasn't a safety net for family. It was a lifeline for their debt. Miles emailed me copies of her correspondence. Reading her words, we need to close this deal quickly. My father's traveling indefinitely made my stomach turn. She'd written me out of existence before she even packed her suitcase. I forwarded everything to Claire. She called within minutes. This is premeditated, she said. We'll file an injunction first thing tomorrow. When I hung up, the house felt different. Not haunted anymore, just hollow, empty of trust, but full of clarity. I spent the next 2 days turning my home into a fortress. Security cameras above every door, motion sensors in the hallway, every document photographed, printed, and stored in labeled envelopes. My office became a command center. Folders for legal documents, property photos, financial records. That evening, Frank stopped by, holding 2 beers. You're working late, he said, glancing at the piles of paper. Feels like old times, I said. Building something. He leaned against the doorframe. Or rebuilding. We sat on the porch in silence for a while. The sky burned gold, then purple. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. You think she'll come back? He asked finally. Yes, I said. And I'll be ready. He nodded, raised his bottle in quiet solidarity, and walked back to his yard. Inside, I turned off the lights and stood by the window, looking out at the desert road leading up to the house. For years, that road had been a symbol of family, the path my daughter drove down every Sunday for dinner. Now, it was a line in the sand. She'd cross it again soon. And when she did, she'd find that the man she'd abandoned wasn't the same one waiting at gate 17 inches Marrakesh. She'd find a father who'd turned his pain into a case file. And this time, the ambush would be mine. The call came from Frank just after noon. They're here, he said quietly. Pulled up 5 minutes ago. Same silver SUV. She's got boxes in the back. I set my coffee cup down and looked through the blinds. The sun glared off the windshield, but I could see Heather behind the wheel, Ethan beside her. They didn't rush to get out. They just sat there for a moment, heads bent together like they were rehearsing a story. Then the doors opened. Heather stepped out first, perfectly composed, sunglasses on, hair pinned tight. Ethan followed, carrying his phone like a shield. He still had that practiced half smile, the one I used to mistake for confidence when it was really cowardice. They walked up the driveway slowly, almost casually, until they reached the front door. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for, the metallic scrape of a key that didn't fit. Once, twice, harder the 3rd time. Nothing. Maybe it's jammed, Ethan muttered. Heather tried next. I could hear her voice through the door, sharp now, impatient. This is ridiculous. The lock must be rusted. I let them struggle a little longer before I spoke. You won't get in that way, I said through the door. There was a pause, a short, startled silence. Then Heather's voice, sugary and false. Dad? Oh my God, Dad? You're home? We were so worried about you. I opened the door just enough to see them. Worried? I asked. Is that what you call leaving someone in a foreign airport without a passport or a dime? Her smile froze. You're mistaken. We tried to find you. We thought you'd already boarded. Stop, I said, my voice low. Don't lie to me in my own doorway. Ethan shifted, uncomfortably. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted. There's theft, fraud, and abandonment. But misunderstanding? No. I stepped aside just enough so they could see the coffee table behind me. On it sat the evidence I'd arranged with deliberate precision. The printed emails, the notary report, the police forms from Marrakesh, and the copy of my attorney's injunction, all under the title sheet. Motion to invalidate deed of gift based on fraud. Heather's eyes darted to the papers. The color drained from her face. What is that? She asked. That, I said, is the reason you won't be sleeping here tonight or ever again. Ethan tried to step forward, but I raised a hand. One more inch, and I'll call the police. The report's already filed. Your names are in it. Heather's tone hardened. You can't do this. That deed is legal. You signed it. The house is mine now. Then explain why you changed flights without telling me. Why you took my passport and phone. Why you emailed real estate agents while pretending we were on a family trip. She stammered. That's not dumb. Save it. My lawyer has the emails. And the agents have already provided statements. Do you want to keep pretending? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Ethan finally spoke, trying for authority. You don't have a case. You signed willingly. There's nothing you can prove. I smiled, not kindly. Then maybe you should talk to the notary you paid $500 in cash to meet you at a coffee shop, because he's already given his statement. Turns out lying about your father's health is bad for business. Heather's eyes widened. Ethan's confidence faltered. You found him? I found everything, I said quietly. Every email, every document, every lie. You thought I'd stay gone long enough for you to move in, sell the house, and disappear, but you miscalculated one thing. Heather swallowed hard. What's that? You forgot who built this place. Every beam, every wire, every lock, I know it better than you ever will. And unlike you, I know how to protect what I build. Her voice cracked. Dad, please. No, I said. Not Dad. Not today. You stopped earning that word when you decided money mattered more than blood. For the first time, she looked small, stripped of her confidence, her poise. She took a step back, then another. Ethan cleared his throat. You're making a mistake. You think you can win, but you can't afford this kind of legal fight. I nodded slowly. Maybe. But I can afford something you can't, integrity. He sneered, trying to recover his composure. We'll see you in court. Good, I said. It'll be nice to have witnesses this time. Heather's hand trembled as she reached for Ethan's arm. Come on, she whispered. As they turned toward the car, I added, Oh, one more thing, I'm recording this conversation. Arizona's a one-party consent state. But just so you know, you're both on tape. Ethan froze mid-step. Heather's shoulders stiffened. They didn't look back, just hurried to the car. The engine roared, tires crunching over gravel as they reversed down the driveway. I stood there in the doorway until the sound faded. The desert wind rustled through the trees. The house, my house, was quiet again. I closed the door, turned the new deadbolt, and leaned against it, breathing slowly. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. They thought they'd find a weak old man waiting to beg for mercy. Instead, they found a father who'd learned to fight in silence. The first battle was over. The war was just beginning. The courthouse in downtown Tucson smelled like old paper and polished wood, the scent of every decision that had ever changed a life. I arrived early, suit pressed, documents in a leather folder clutched like a weapon. Claire Yu, my attorney, was already waiting inside Department 12, her calm posture belying the storm we were about to enter. Across the aisle sat Heather and Ethan. She wore a black blazer hair pinned back in that deliberate way she always used when she wanted to look in control. Ethan looked smaller than I remembered, his confidence replaced by something like calculation, and beside them their lawyer, Brent Walters. Sharp suit, perfect hair, the kind of man who made truth sound like inconvenience. As I sat, Walters glanced at me and smiled like we were opponents in a game instead of father and daughter on opposite sides of a battlefield. "Stay composed," Claire whispered. "He'll try to provoke you. Don't give him the satisfaction." When Judge Callahan entered, everyone stood. Her gaze swept the room, clinical, unreadable. She'd seen every kind of family ruin there was, and I doubted ours would surprise her. Case number 45 to 1792. Grayson versus Grayson, she announced. Petition to invalidate deed of gift based on fraud and undue influence. Walters began his opening argument with a voice trained to charm juries. "Your Honor, this is a simple misunderstanding turned into a vendetta. My client, Miss Heather Grayson, was given her father's property willingly, in writing, with proper notarization. Now, after a personal disagreement, he regrets his decision. But regret does not equal fraud." He turned, gesturing toward me as if I were an exhibit. "Mr. Grayson is 70 years old, retired, alone, struggling with memory lapses, the perfect storm for confusion." I felt my hands tighten around the edge of the table, but Claire's quiet voice anchored me. "Let him talk," she murmured. Walters smiled, as if he could feel me bristle. "We will present evidence that he fully understood the document, that he signed it willingly, and that he even told his daughter, and I quote, 'This house should be yours someday anyway.' Lies. Clever, rehearsed lies." When he sat, Claire stood with a stillness that drew the whole room to her. "Your Honor, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is manipulation. A daughter who weaponized trust to steal her father's home. The so-called deed was signed on a tablet under false pretenses, labeled as a medical directive. Within weeks, Mr. Grayson was stranded abroad, his passport and phone missing, while Miss Grayson attempted to sell the property. That's not confusion. That's a calculated crime." Judge Callahan nodded once. "We'll hear testimony." I took the stand first. My palms were dry. My heart was not. Claire began gently guiding me through the timeline. Heather's promise of a family trip, the strange behavior at the airport, the missing passport, the notary I never met again. She projected the emails from real estate agents onto a screen, each one dated before I even left Arizona. When she finished, Walters rose. "Mr. Grayson," he began smoothly, "you're an intelligent man, yes?" "I like to think so." "You ran an engineering firm for 30 years? 35. So, reading and understanding documents was part of your career?" "Yes." "Then how is it possible that you didn't understand this one?" I met his gaze. "Because my daughter didn't give me a document. She gave me her tablet and said it was for medical records. She scrolled past every line before I could read it. I trusted her." "Trusted her so much that you signed without question?" "Yes." "So this is about your mistake, not her deception?" "It's about both," I said evenly. "She made sure my trust became her tool." Walters smirked. "Or perhaps this is guilt, a father who gave his daughter the house, then changed his mind after a family argument." "Did she tell you," I asked, leaning slightly forward, "that she also left me alone in a foreign airport without a phone or passport? Did she mention she contacted 3 realtors to sell the property while I was gone?" He hesitated. "There's no proof she..." Claire cut in. "There's plenty, Your Honor. Exhibit C. The realtor emails authenticated through metadata. Exhibit D. Police report from Marrakesh, confirming stolen identification." The judge raised her eyebrows at Walters. "Counselor, I suggest you let the witness finish before arguing." Walters nodded stiffly. "No further questions." When I stepped down, my legs trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what it meant to say it all aloud. Years of fatherhood reduced to evidence. Next came Heather's turn. She took the stand, with the same false confidence I'd seen 100 times when she lied about late-night curfews, about her failing business, about borrowing money she never paid back. Her voice wavered just enough to sound rehearsed. I only wanted to help my dad. He's been lonely since Mom passed. I thought putting the house in my name would protect him in case anything happened. Claire stood, expression unreadable. Miss Grayson, did you or did you not pay a notary named Lance Perry $500 in cash to certify your father's signature? Heather blinked. He came to us. He said, "That's not what he said," Claire interrupted. "We have his affidavit. He stated you told him your father was terminally ill and couldn't travel. You signed the form in a coffee shop, not at a law office, not at a bank, at a Starbucks." Heather's face drained of color. Ethan shifted uncomfortably at the defense table. "And these realtor emails," Claire continued, "did you write them?" I was exploring options," Heather said weakly. "Before or after the Morocco trip?" Heather hesitated. "Before. So before your father willingly gifted you the house, you were already trying to sell it?" "I didn't mean." "That's enough," Judge Callahan said, voice cool as glass. "We'll adjourn for the day. I expect full documentation from both parties by next session." As we packed up, Walters whispered something harsh to Heather. Ethan kept his eyes down. Claire leaned toward me. "They're cracking." She contradicted half of her own statement. I nodded, feeling the first faint pulse of something like victory. Outside, the afternoon heat shimmered off the courthouse steps. Reporters weren't there, just the endless Arizona sun and the hum of distant traffic. Claire put on her sunglasses. "We'll call our investigator next. Miles found something bigger. Credit reports. Bank transfers. Your daughter's been trying to cover debt with property sales. It proves motive." "Motive," I repeated softly. The word felt heavy in my mouth. "Exactly. This isn't about family. It's about desperation." That night, back home, I sat at my desk, under the dim light of the reading lamp, reviewing every document again, the emails, the bank records, the affidavits. Each page felt like a small piece of my life, returning to where it belonged. Heather had taken my trust, my home, and tried to bury me under her lies. But I was an engineer. I knew how to rebuild after collapse. The next hearing was set for 3 weeks later. Claire said it might decide everything. And as I closed the folder and looked out at the desert through my window, I made a silent promise. When I walked back into that courtroom, it wouldn't be as a father pleading for mercy. It would be as a man reclaiming his name. The sky over Tucson was a washed-out gray. The morning of the final hearing, the kind of color that promises heat later, but hides it for now. I sat in the passenger seat while Claire drove, her phone balanced between her fingers, eyes scanning a new email. "Miles just sent an update," she said. "You might want to brace yourself." I turned toward her. "Good or bad?" "Both." We reached the courthouse before she explained. Inside, Department 12 buzzed with quiet tension. Reporters had caught wind of the case. "Local retiree battles daughter over fraudulent deed," one headline had read. I didn't like the attention, but I understood it. Betrayal, money, family. Those words sell faster than truth. Heather and Ethan were already there. She looked paler this time. Her confidence chipped down to something brittle. Ethan whispered to her, but she didn't respond. Walters, her lawyer, sat stiff and silent, flipping pages with the kind of focus that smells like desperation. When Judge Callahan entered, everyone rose. She didn't waste words. "We'll hear continuation of testimony. Mr. Walters, call your next witness." He stood, his voice less smooth than before. "The defense calls Miss Heather Grayson." Heather's heels clicked as she approached the stand. The oath sounded small against the large room. Walters tried to lead her carefully, but she stumbled early. "You maintain that your father willingly signed the deed, correct?" "Yes," she said, eyes on her lap. "And you understood this as a gift, not a loan or conditional agreement?" "Yes." "And you never attempted to sell the property without his consent?" Silence. Walters cleared his throat. Miss Grayson? She looked up, her eyes glassy. I may have asked for an appraisal. I didn't mean. He cut her off, frustrated. No further questions. Claire rose, calm as always. Miss Grayson, you said you only wanted to protect your father's assets, yes? Heather nodded faintly. Then why did you email a realtor on April 3rd saying, quote, I can finalize the sale once he's gone longer than 2 weeks? The courtroom stirred. Heather blinked rapidly, color draining from her cheeks. I didn't. Claire handed the judge a printed email chain, authenticated by the service provider, Your Honor. Judge Callahan skimmed it, her brows lifting. Continue. Miss Grayson, Claire said softly, is it true you told the notary your father was terminally ill? Heather's voice cracked. I thought it would make things easier. I didn't mean. What did you mean? Claire pressed. When you left him in a foreign airport with no passport, wallet, or phone. Was that to make things easier too? Heather looked toward Ethan, but he refused to meet her eyes. I didn't leave him, she whispered. Ethan said we'd just change flights, that Dad would be fine. I didn't know it would. Enough, Judge Callahan said firmly. I think we've heard all we need from Miss Grayson. Heather stepped down, trembling. Walters rubbed his forehead. His case was crumbling, and he knew it. Then Claire stood. Your Honor, before we rest we have new evidence. She nodded to the back of the room. The doors opened, and Miles Harker entered, carrying a small stack of photographs and a sealed manila envelope. He walked like someone who'd been waiting for this moment. He addressed the judge directly. I conducted a search of storage units registered under the names Heather Grayson and Ethan Miller. The one at Pima Self-Storage was accessed 3 times in the past month. With the court's warrant, we opened it yesterday morning. He handed the envelope to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. Inside, he continued, we found several of Mr. Grayson's reported stolen possessions. A vintage Leica camera, a 1967 Omega watch, and a silver dinner set. All matched the serial numbers provided in his police report. The room fell silent. Miles paused, then added, we also found a pending property sale contract between Heather Grayson and a developer named Claymont Homes, dated 2 days after she filed for ownership. It included a down payment receipt for $50,000 already deposited in her personal account. Walters shot to his feet. Objection! That evidence was obtained without. Overruled, Judge Callahan said sharply. The search was executed under warrant. Sit down, Mr. Walters. Heather covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Ethan stared straight ahead, expression blank. Claire spoke again, her voice steady but not unkind. Your Honor, this isn't confusion. It's not a family misunderstanding. It's a premeditated planned theft, disguised as love. The judge took off her glasses, folded them, and leaned back. I've heard enough. She looked at Heather first. Miss Grayson, the evidence against you is overwhelming. You took advantage of a parent's trust. You lied to a notary, falsified circumstances, attempted to sell property that was never yours, and abandoned your father abroad to cover your tracks. Then she turned to me. Mr. Grayson, I wish I could say cases like this are rare. They're not. But what's rare is your composure. Most people break long before this point. I nodded once, unable to speak. Judge Callahan reached for her gavel. This court hereby declares the deed of gift null and void. Title and ownership revert immediately to Mr. Samuel Grayson. The defendants are ordered to return all stolen property and will be referred to the district attorney for prosecution on charges of fraud and theft. The gavel struck wood. Heather let out a sound halfway between a sob and a gasp. Ethan muttered something under his breath and slumped in his chair. Walters gathered his papers wordlessly. Even he looked ashamed. Claire exhaled slowly beside me. It's over, she whispered. But I knew better. Winning doesn't erase what's been lost, it just stops the bleeding. As the courtroom emptied, I sat for a long moment, staring at the empty witness stand where Heather had been. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike on our old street, how she'd fallen and scraped her knees, and looked up at me, eyes wet, waiting for comfort. I wondered what part of that little girl had died along the way. Outside, the Arizona sun had broken through the clouds. Claire shook my hand. Justice feels different than you imagine, doesn't it? Yeah, I said quietly. It feels heavy. Miles joined us on the steps, handing me a small evidence bag with my watch inside. They'll hold the rest until the case closes. Thought you'd want this back. I turned the watch over in my hand. The glass was scratched, but it still ticked steady, defiant, like me. Thanks, Miles, I said, for everything. He smiled faintly. Just doing my job, sir. You did the hard part. As Claire and Miles walked ahead, I lingered for a moment at the top of the courthouse steps. The light reflected off the windows, blinding for a second. It felt like standing on a bridge I'd built myself, battered by storms, but still standing. The war was over, but the rebuilding had just begun. 6 weeks passed before the final paperwork arrived. When the envelope from the court clerk landed in my mailbox, I didn't open it right away. I just held it there on the porch, feeling the afternoon heat press through the paper. I already knew what it said. Judgment in favor of the plaintiff. My house, my name, my dignity restored. Inside, everything looked different. The same furniture, the same photos on the wall, but a new kind of quiet filled the rooms. The kind that follows a storm. Claire stopped by that evening to have me sign a few last documents. She smiled when she saw the place. You've been fixing it up, she said, noticing the new paint in the hallway. I nodded, one wall at a time. You keeping the house now? She asked. For a while, I said. Then it'll go to someone who needs it more. She smiled softly. You've got a good heart, Mr. Grayson. Even after all this. When she left, I walked to the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun sink behind the mountains. The sky burned red, then violet colors, that never failed to remind me why I'd built my life here in the first place. The phone buzzed once on the table beside me. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but instinct made me answer. A shaky voice came through. Heather. Dad? For a long moment, I didn't speak. I know you don't want to hear from me, she said. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. The police came. They took statements. I lost the condo. Ethan's gone. Her voice cracked. I don't know what happens next. I closed my eyes. The old anger tried to rise again, but it couldn't reach me anymore. It had burned itself out weeks ago. Heather, I said quietly, you made choices I'll never understand, but you're still my daughter, and I'll always hope you find your way back to being the person your mother and I raised. Silence. Then a small sob. Thank you. I'm not forgiving what you did, I said. I'm forgiving what it did to me. I'm done carrying it. She cried softly for a while before hanging up. When the line went dead, I stared at the horizon, a thin band of gold, just before the darkness took over. Later that week, I met with a notary at my kitchen table, the same spot where my daughter had once handed me a tablet full of lies. I slid the new will across to her. Upon my passing, 1614 East Fremont Street would be donated to the TUCSON Elder Support Foundation to provide housing for seniors abandoned by their families. The deed that had nearly destroyed me would become a sanctuary for others like me. When the notary left, I poured myself another coffee and sat on the porch, the desert quiet, except for the hum of cicadas and the rustle of wind through the mesquite trees. The watch on my wrist ticked steadily, faithful as ever. I thought about the bridges I used to build, how the strongest ones weren't the tallest or prettiest, but the ones that flexed just enough to survive the wind. Maybe that's what resilience really was. I took a deep breath and whispered to the fading light, you can lose your house, your money, even your family's love, but if you keep your integrity, you still have a home inside yourself. The stars began to emerge, one by one, soft against the indigo sky. I leaned back in the chair and smiled faintly. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry or afraid. I was simply free. And as night settled over Tucson, I realized something my daughter never had: that real wealth isn't what you pass down in deeds or bank accounts. It's the peace you build when no one can take anything else from you.